All right, well, I'll tell you a real quick story. So about 2 years ago, I used to work with one of the biggest personalities on television. And the question that we used to have was whether or not we could measure the impact of social media on the program and vice versa. So we have a very special guest here today. I'd like to introduce her. She is with Nielsen, and her whole role is to answer this question. Her name is Radha Subramaniam. Please help me welcome her to the stage. Thank you very much.
How are you all? Good afternoon. So I'm here to talk about the relationship between social media and television, the largest medium and the fastest growing and probably most exciting one out there. I'm going to talk in general terms for a while, telling you about some trends I see in social and the relationships between social and television. And then we're going to share with you the results of a statistical model that we've been running over the past 6 months that starts to quantify some of these relationships. I'm going to begin with what has become perhaps the most quoted or most seen slide in the history of social media, a slide developed by my colleague David Edelman of McKinsey. Rebecca and others who are on the panel right after me will talk more about the end of the funnel and how we need to think of the funnel differently. I'll just make a couple points before we get started. One is the cyclical nature of the relationship between the brand and the product and the consumer is something many, many people have referenced today. And nowhere is the cyclicality more true than the relationship between social media and TV. People talk more about TV than they talk about pretty much anything else. And also TV is more critical in driving social than many of the other media out there. So this consumer decision journey comes alive, particularly in the case of TV. A little bit hard to see, but I'm going to share some of the results from our 2011 benchmark State of Social Media survey that we published a couple months ago. Why do people engage in social? They engage in social for many different reasons. The deep relationship with family and friends, the need to both get and give feedback on products and services. And then there's this whole category called entertainment. And what do I mean by that? 2 out of 3 people say that entertainment is the one reason they participate and consume social media. This means many different things. It means that my friends are entertaining. All the stuff that's going on there is really entertaining. But also means entertainment in the traditional sense. I learn more about shows, I learn more about celebrities, I learn more about what's going on, I stay in the know, and it adds to entertainment and professionally produced content in a very specific way. I will blow past this because it seems to be unreadable on the screen, but this engagement with social media, specifically for entertainment, is, among other things, a daily activity. A few years ago, we saw about 60% of people reading reviews, reading what other consumers were saying online. Now there are about 60% of consumers are actually producing such content, and most of this content is produced in categories such as restaurants, home electronics, and so on. But entertainment is up there. Entertainment is one of those categories where 1 in 5 people are talking, and a whole bunch more are reading and consuming and retweeting and commenting back and so on. So it's very different from what appears at the bottom there, a category like baby care, where this content is produced by a smaller number, even though it's consumed by many more. So what this means is there are some categories where consumers want to be touched in many, many different ways. Yes, they want to be touched through social media. These are categories like baby care, financial services, and so on. But they also want to really reach a live person. Entertainment and restaurants are really different. A lot of people are talking about them. That's what you see in the size of the bubble there. But there are many, many more people commenting than these high information, narrower categories. So who are these people who are talking about TV? Social media overall, as we all know, tends to skew a little bit female. But the population on many of these sites about television tends to skew a little bit male. And the one big demo skew we see is the 25 to 34s. They tend to be consuming and commenting much more than many others out there. There are no other big age, gender, or ethnic stories when it comes to social media and TV. And what do viewers talk about? There's a lot on reality shows around who's winning, who's losing, and so on. There's a lot of general commentary about whether a show is funny or entertaining. Then there's, the hotness, the physical attractiveness of talent, but then the fans themselves, the people who produce social media, tend to become a topic unto themselves. They talk about other fans, the value of other fans, the value of what people are saying and whether they're right or not. So there's almost a meta text around social media conversation around television and fan community. When does TV buzz happen? Follows quite predictable paths, pretty high on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, when many of the highest rated shows air. But what I find more interesting is when you map this along the months of the year. A lot of conversation right before and during season launches and series launches in September. It peters off over the winter months. A lot of excitement in January when the shows are returning, and then again a peak around the season finales in April and May. Why does this matter? Why do any of these stats matter, especially to those of us who are in the entertainment business? They matter because when people can share content about it, they will. 1 out of 4 social media messages contain concrete links to content. And I don't mean party pictures, I don't mean family videos. I mean actually professionally produced content that's being shared in social media. So when all of television becomes shareable, likable, forwardable, you can start to imagine the fundamental upheaval that'll happen in the funnel when all of television becomes profoundly and fundamentally digitized. Buzz often grows over the course of a season. It peaks around the premieres at the beginning of the year. There's a mid-season peak, and then large spikes during the finale. The relationship between social media and television, not surprisingly, is tightest for the youngest end of the demos. The 18 to 34, the 12 to 17s, have the strongest correlation with ratings overall. But there are statistically significant relationships for practically every single age group, including people over the age of 50, through the course of a television season. Let me get to some actual stats and findings from the model. We've been in the process of running a model for about 6 months now. This is the beginning of probably another year or 2 of work that we will be doing on this area. We've been looking at buzz volume, the source of the messages, who the authors are, what the level of promotional spend or ad spend is, what the prior episode TV ratings are, what the prior season TV ratings are, what the genre is, whether it shows on broadcast, on cable, whether it's a news show, it's a returning show, and so on. There's a lot of data here, and then we're looking at, bazillions of social media data points, as my daughter would say. What we're trying to do in these models is we're trying to isolate the impacts of social. We're trying to control for many of these other drivers of television ratings and start to tease out what impact social, if any, has on linear TV ratings. So what did we find? Social matters every which way you cut it. When you look at the premiere of a show, it matters for women of every age group. It matters for all men under the age of 50. For the mid-season, you see a very similar pattern. It matters for women of every age group and men, again, under the age of 50. And for the finale, that's when you have a flip, and it starts to matter for 50-plus-year-old men as well. And what does this very concretely mean? In the models that we ran, and I have rocket scientists who are sitting here who can explain all the log-transformed OLS models that went into some of this analysis, but and I think I just lost that, we are seeing that a 9% increase in buzz volume corresponds to a 1% increase in ratings at the premiere level. There are variations by demo and so on. It matters all the time for a certain Does that work? I'll just speak loudly and hope to compensate for technology. And for men, it matters more for competitive reality and drama than it does for non-competitive reality and comedy. Much better. It's hard to speak with multiple things in your hand, but we'll keep trying. Sorry. No problem. 2 weeks prior to a mid-season episode, a 14% increase in buzz corresponds directly to a 1% increase in ratings. So slightly weaker relationship at the mid-season point than a premiere, but again, a very strong relationship. So strong relationships through the course of a season, stronger relationship first half of the season than the second half, but always significant. For a finale, again, a 14% increase in buzz volume directly corresponds to a 1% increase in ratings. Very similar to what we see at the mid-season level. So what does this all mean, and where are we going with it? We feel we've done the beginnings of some work. We have demonstrated at an aggregate market level that these two media work together, and they work together well, and they're meaningful. We're working with various clients at the individual show level because, as you can imagine, while there are relationships for these 250 shows we looked at, it looks very different when you're looking at an individual show. We're also working with networks and programmers on looking at the effectiveness of the promotions themselves and how smart their advertising has been in driving social. We're also looking at CUME, or unique users of a television program, and how that may have an even stronger relationship to social than ratings themselves, because you can kind of get a horse to water, but you can't necessarily make him or her drink it. We're also working on developing reciprocal models. Yes, social drives TV, but how does TV drive buzz? And this question becomes even more important when you think of the entire advertising ecosystem, when you think of paid, owned, earned, and how advertising in TV has a role to play in the complex ecosystem of social and other forms of media. Thank you very much. I'm available offline for questions.